Okay. Really appreciate everybody coming out, spending some time with us, and hope that that you get all your questions answered today and then going forward. We're pretty open with the media. I have been until we get to game week, then we tighten it up a little bit. But I know you've done great coverage in the past. Really appreciate it. And first off, kudos to Josh for putting. I didn't know we still made printed media guides. I thought everything was virtual or whatever you have it, but this is pretty handy, and it did a great job with it. And I'm gonna get it all the coaches so we can learn about everything we know that Greg has not told me about JSU is in this book. So we're gonna study that up and do what we can with that. And I have my coordinators here. Zach Alley, our defensive coordinator, Pat Kirkland, our special teams coordinator, and Rod Smith, who's busy closing on a house, but he's on his way, so he'll be here as well as some of our players. Yeah, I think our guys really worked hard over the summer. Unlike years past, we could check on them the summer, which we did, but really in the month of July, it was just the strength staff, and they did a good job. Just talking to our players, they feel confident that they're in pretty good shape, and they did some good work in the weight room. The first year is always going to be the hardest for us as coaches as far as knowing exactly what we have. You can look at film from last year. You can try to study from spring practice, but really with almost 50 new players added to the roster since the spring, we've got a whole different team than we did just a few months ago, and certainly from what we had in the past. And so there's going to be a lot of evaluation done over the next 3 weeks. A lot of teaching done. We got to get ready to play a game, of course. But I think I've got things in place with our staff that our players will be excited about. Certainly when we lost Calvin McGee back on May 20th, it was a blow as much personally as it was professionally. But I was able to hire Rod Smith to move in here, and it was the perfect guy, because Rod had been on our staff. It was close with Calvin as we were, and so we've been able to move on with that. But there's, as I said earlier, there's a lot of question marks in the first year. I'm not one to make bold predictions one way or another. But I'll tell the team when our first team meeting tonight, I think their attitude as far as working hard has been really good, and that's expected. I mean, they don't really have a choice, but I'll tell them, working hard doesn't guarantee you'll win. But if you don't work hard, it guarantees you'll lose. So at least from that standpoint, we'll put the effort in, and then in our last year on the FCS level, I still say 1AA. I mean, hell, what's with all the alphabet, right? It's 1A and 1AA. So last year on the 1AA move, until we move up, there's a whole lot of evaluation going on. I think coaches always get evaluated. I'm used to it, doing this long enough as a head coach. But from our player standpoint, certainly going forward, it's full scholarship or none next year. And so maybe that's part of it. They want to compete for that. But I hope it's more than anything else that we appeal to their competitive nature, that this program's always won. They've had success on every level, and we have the same expectation when we move up to Division 1A next year. So with that, I'm open to any questions you want to have, and we'll roll with it.
That's in Cassim Gadsden Times. Coach Rod, obviously being a offensive guy, you have a new quarterback, entirely new quarterback room in there, new offensive coordinator. What are you looking for the offense, starting tomorrow?
Yeah, Zion Webb's the only quarterback we had coming back from the spring. We've added a transfer in Aaron McLaughlin and a couple young guys. So I'm not overly comfortable with the depth we have there, because I don't know about him. And even with Zion, he's played some, but he's not played in this system. But I don't want to say it's the same system for 30 years, but the same base of what we're doing has gone on. And I hired Rod Smith. The thing that he played for me as a quarterback. He's been on my staff for a long time, so he knows what we want. I'll still be involved heavily I get involved in a little bit of everything, good or bad. I get involved in all three phases, everything we do in the program, but more so even on the offensive side of the ball. I'll still call plays. I'll have Rod assist me in that. And there's some non-negotiables. We like to control the tempo. We like to be physical. and we'll do different formations, and we'll use a lot of our guys. But what we feature will be more based on what we do well. At the end of spring, we couldn't feature anything, so we didn't do anything well. But that's pretty typical of most of the springs I've gone through. The first spring. Now, by the end of the next 2.5 weeks, we'll figure out, okay, this is what we do well with our personnel. This is what they do well, and let's try to feature that and have enough variety to win games. So it's kind of, we can do a lot of different things with our system, so to speak, but some of the non-negotiables is controlling the tempo and playing really physical.
Hey, Coach, Johnny Cotton on ABC 3340 in Birmingham. You've been a first-year head coach in different places throughout your career. Can you just talk to the challenge of transitioning and getting your culture, your way of doing things, and just how the team has reacted to Rich Rod as a first-year head coach through the first few weeks of the spring and then up into camp?
Yeah, it's always, as I mentioned earlier, the first year is always the most difficult, whether you call it culture or just how you implement things, whether it's in the weight room or off the field, whatever. It's always in getting to know each other. And then now with the way college football is, and college sports in general is, with the unlimited salary cap and open free agency and all the mess that it is right now, that's making it even more of a challenge to build the type of culture that you want. But we came in with a good group of young men. Now some of them left, and there'll be more that leave, and we'll add more on, and that thing is probably going to be constant until we finally wise up and get some kind of guardrails and rules for it. But I've always been, like I said, the first. I tell the guys I have to basically, it's kind of unique when you coach them. I coach them all the same right now. I mean, I'll yell at all of them, equally and all that, but as you get to know them, you'll say, okay, when you get on a guy, some guys, it will ruin their confidence, and some guys, it motivates them. But until I know them, I'm going to treat them all the same. Now, we'll always be treated fairly, but sometimes you coach a guy differently based on, what helps him have success, whether it's being on him or whether it's, being a little nicer, I guess you could say. And so as I get to know them throughout camp, we'll adjust that. But our players know everybody's going to be held to the standard. There's nobody in the program, myself included, that's not going to be subject to some critical coaching and thinking and talking about as we go. One thing I learned, and I've said this to many of you all the time, I learned this a long time ago, but reinforced when I coached my son last year. And I asked him, because he's a pretty sharp guy, like 4.5 GPA and all that. And I'm like, okay, what's most important to you as a player, from a coaching standpoint? He said, Dad, 2 things. Don't ever waste our time, and always tell us the truth. So that was easy. So we didn't have long meetings, and we didn't meet just to meet. It was going to be productive. Our practices, we might go 2 hours, but we didn't have a lot of wasted time. And when we go out to practice, we're going out to practice. We're not going to be standing around and holding hands and singing Kumbaya. That's like huddles. When we go in the huddle, it's a trick play. Who wants to see a bunch of fat guys hold hands, right? So, we don't like to waste time. And then the other part, telling the truth, is you don't get a lot of that in college sports, especially now. Coaches not really telling players where they stand. Players want to know where they stand and how to get better. And that was one reason why I think I had 10 quarterbacks in Monroe, and none of them went in the transfer portal. And I think numbers 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 10 probably didn't have much chance of playing, but they stayed there. And every day we had meetings, we told the truth, we laughed a lot, and they always knew where they stood. And I think that's one good thing for me, telling some of my coaches, especially the younger coaches, tell these guys exactly where they're at, good and bad. And so they don't have to guess, and we don't play games with our guys. I mean, it's straightforward and honest and brutally honest at times, and we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. If we do something that's not the best, then we got to be critical of ourselves. So that we've been able to, I know it's a long answer to your short question, but we've been able to do that so far.
Hey, Coach, Nolan Knight with Way 31 in Huntsville. Well, with it being the last year in FCS, you're ineligible for the playoffs this year. What are some of the difficulties and motivating? Have you had to deal with a situation where a national championship isn't even on the table?
Yeah, that's a very fair question. In fact, we haven't lost a lot of guys, and I don't talk about the guys that don't play for us anyway. But I know there was reasons that guys said, well, I can't play. We can't play for the playoffs. What do we got to play for? There's a lot to play for. I mean, you're playing for yourself and increasing your own value, but we have a chance to win a conference, which is kind of neat. The ASUN has done a great job of putting something together and giving us a chance to win a conference championship. And then also for our own guys, just playing for our I think we have 14 seniors that are playing in their last season, and they'll be a big focal point about playing them, make sure they feel special. And then and I have really talked about playoffs or anything in the spring. None guys didn't ask about, but I'll bring it up. I'll tell them. I said, we'll be honest. We are not eligible for the 1AA playoffs, but we have a whole lot to play for, and we'll talk about that. But it is in the transition. That's what you're going to deal with, and then next year. I know it's next year, but next year we'll be in part of conference and have an ability to play in a bowl game, which is pretty neat.
Hey, Coach. Carrie Osep, WVTM in Birmingham. So with the idea that you are transitioning, obviously, as Johnny mentioned, you've been a first-year head coach many times in your career. But if you're being honest, what's the one thing about this team that makes you most excited after this evaluation period that you've already had with this team? And what's going to be the biggest challenge that you foresee in this first season? Yeah,
I think the thing that's most excited is that I think we have a lot of guys that love football. There's a lot of places that have a lot of guys that like football but not love it. I like to have players that love it and need it. Then when it's one thing we control as coaches, I guess you could say, is playing time. And you want guys to want to play. And if it doesn't bother them not to play, then you probably got the wrong guy or the wrong guys. And I think we do have a bunch of guys that love football and want to get better at it. So that's the thing's probably got the most excited. The thing that makes me the most nervous is that, not just this year but moving forward, our competition is going to get better and is getting better. And so we have to be better than what we were a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. There is a difference between 1A and 1AA. And I know we got 1AA one more year. And there was a difference between 1AA and Division II. And if I'm studying right, without looking through this fabulous media guide, we won, and when we won, when we moved up, it was planned to move up, and we moved up and won. And I think we have the same kind of plan. But it is a little bit different when you're moving to Division 1A. And the whole different deal with, from a recruiting standpoint, from a budget standpoint, and all that. So, we have to make sure we recruit guys that we think can play on a 1A level, and then we got to do our job of developing them. And the one thing I'm pleased about, our strength staff, I think, did a great job this summer. Blake McCall, our head strength coach, and those guys, and our players did a great job of buying into it and getting bigger and stronger, faster. Right now, our goal with our current guys is to make them as good as they could possibly be, both mentally and physically. And I think we're on that path. We're not there yet, but we're on that path.
Hi, Coach. Pace Strickland with WOJS 91.9 FM. I was wondering a little bit about your daily routine. How do you get mentally prepared for every practice or game?
It doesn't take me long to get fired up, and I guess I was telling the coaches, I don't know if it's natural or just a competitive nature, but I've always been able to, when I was particularly as a head coach, you want to see as much as you can see. I started off as a small college head coach where you didn't have practices filmed. You couldn't go back later that day and see what you missed and all that. So you had to see as much you could see in practice and correct it right then on practice. You didn't have the ability to correct it later, right? So that probably helped me, as a young head coach, of being more active with my eyes and coaching than waiting to correct it later. And I told all of our staff, for our young coaches, one of the traits you want to learn as a coach is to learn how to correct, really, especially when you're going fast like we do. If you see something, say something. And if you can correct it right then. And then we can correct it again later now, obviously on the film. But I think that's one of the things that have helped. But every year you learn. I would like to think, I've learned something every year and get better. I like to, still try to stay in shape. So we'll practice at 8 o'clock. So I'll get a workout in on the Stairmaster at 6 or 6:30. And then we'll practice early. We'll go through that. And I like watching film together, which is a little bit different too. It's like a lot of times you'll separate offense and defense. we'll spend a lot of time, the whole staff, watching the whole team for 15 or 20 minutes or a half hour or so, just so everybody's on the same page. I mean, I completely trust our staff on all three phases, that their coaches know what they're doing. But I think it's my job to at least be in the middle of it and help out when I can help out.
Hey, Coach. Lyndon Blake, WBRC in Birmingham. You gave me one of my favorite lines after the spring game where you said you didn't know what the players put in their biscuits that morning or something along that. It was great.
Yeah, it wasn't good, whatever that was. I'm trying to forget about that spring game, but no.
That's burned into my head forever. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you've done since then to kind of add to the team culture or change the team culture here.
Well, we got better biscuits, I hope. Hell, whatever that. The culture, the attitude of the kids in the spring was good too. It's just that the spring game, it was like, I don't know what happened. I mean, it was a soft fest. I mean, nobody hit anybody. We didn't execute anywhere, and I was like I was in the episode of the Twilight Zone. Like, what the hell just happened? But that was a lesson learned. I think from my standpoint is that hey, we can use that as a teaching tool because I could put up with a lot of things, but the two worst four-letter words, and unfortunately I've said a few. I'm getting better at that, but the two worst ones are soft and lazy, and we can't ever be that. And so I think that message, they'll continue to say, listen, we're going to play hard, and we're going to be physical, not stupid physical, but physical within the rules, and those are non-negotiable, and those are every day. And we constantly coach effort. Some people say, well, you don't have to coach effort. Your games are on TV. There's a lot of people in the stands. And I think you do. And I take great pride. If somebody watches us play, and it could be, I always say that the joke, it's not a joke, but every man in America thinks they can do two things, coach football and work a grill. They all think they can do that, right? And maybe they can work a grill, and some of them can coach football, but a lot of them don't really know, right? But they think they know. But you can sit in the stands, no matter who you are, how new you are to the game of football, and tell if a team's playing hard. I'm convinced of that. You can watch and say, boy, those guys play hard. And when we're done playing, I want not just the fans, but I want the other team to say, Lee, those guys play hard. I want them to be miserable to play us, absolutely miserable. I want their fans, opposing fans, to be miserable, and then their team. Maybe, Greg, all the visitors, bathrooms and stuff, maybe we'll shut them all down. We're doing a lot of great renovations here, and I think you all know about it. One thing we're not renovating, the visitors' locker room. It's going to be a mess. I'm just telling you right now. One toilet works, and we'll stop that thing up. So, just so you know.
Coach Mark Edwards,
Hey,
Anniston
Mark.
Star.
Yeah.
To go back to what your son told you about telling the truth, we even saw it at the end of the spring game where you were obviously telling some truth to your team.
Yeah.
How do you handle it when, especially these days, when a kid responds, well, Coach, I think I want to go in the transfer portal. I think that's too much truth for me.
I just said at my staff meeting this morning, I said, we have it's probably a tougher job now as a college coach in all sports than ever before because, particularly they're going to pass, are you kidding me? They're going to pass a rule that you can transfer unlimited times? It's crazy. I can understand grad transfers and even a one-time transfer occasion, but, you're just making it easy for guys to bail out on you if it gets too tough. The reality is if that's not the guy you want on your team anyway, if things get a little bit tough for him, and that's what we talk about having a hard edge. If things get a little bit tough and he wants to go somewhere else, well, shoot, he's probably not the guy you want to build your program on. But at the same time, there's going to be tampering. There's going to be other coaches saying, well, if you're not happy or if the coach gets on you or you're not playing enough, we'll always have a spot for you. And then, so they give them an easy out. So the trick as a coach is you got to make sure you're coaching them up and getting them ready, but they understand why you're doing it. And that you're doing everything you're doing for him is to help him be a better player and create more value for himself. And, if somebody from a Power 5 offers some of our guys $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, we're probably going to lose them a lot of times. But we don't want to lose guys to lateral moves just because they don't like the program or what we're doing for them. I think more than anything, we want to show our players that, one, we can help them, and they're going to love being part of this university and part of this team. That's a trickier thing now than before, but that's still our goal. I want them to feel like that. I was thinking about it earlier. I mean, you talk to everybody, people that played here and coached here, they love this place, and you can see why. I mean, this is an easy place to love. And so you want them to, not just love playing football here, but love living in our city, love going to school here. And that's not just me or my job or my staff job. That's everybody on campus's job. And Greg's understood that, and our president and our board and everybody, them understand that too, and we'll keep preaching that. We want people to come here, and they're not leaving here unless it's from some unbelievable type of opportunity.
Hey, Coach. Tyler Waldrop with the Anniston Star. With such a huge influx of players this offseason, does that change anything you do just in terms of helping the team establish that culture, that chemistry just among the players themselves, and how y'all are able to install stuff?
Sure. I think, first off, there's a whole lot of new guys that got to get to know each other. And so we've got to do a good job in the next 3 weeks and I didn't do a lot of team bonding stuff and all that yet, because I knew the team was not going to be what it was, a month ago, what it is today. So we've got to do that over the next 3.5 weeks. And then from a scheme standpoint, we can't overcomplicate things. I mean, coaches have a tendency to do too much, to want to do, this play looks good, and this play looks good, and this defense looks good. But if your kids can't understand it, then you've got to scale back. And I've told the coaches this yesterday. I said, we can't have a guy that's standing beside me on the sidelines not going in a game that's talented enough to help us because he don't know what the heck he's doing. That's our fault, not his. And so, I mean, young guys coming out of high school, they're still physically learning fundamentals and all that. But if it's an upperclassman guy that's got the fundamentals, he just doesn't have the knowledge of the schemes, well, then we've got to simplify things till he does. And so I'm confident in our coordinators. I'm confident in the way our structured practice will be that by the first game, the scheme part won't be holding people up in order to play. Yes.
So asking Cassim and Gatson times again, you had mentioned the difficulties of being a coach now in college football, and obviously you mentioned you brought in your roster. So have you run into some problems with kids asking for NIL or with all that? And what's that process been like?
Yeah, we haven't got. I've had a few, but I think at this level, whether it's 1AA or Group of 5, you don't run into it too much. I'm sure in Conference USA, there's probably a couple that are doing some NIL deals. I think that'll continue to be a factor until there's some guardrails put on it. I'm just throwing this out there. Not too many coaches have mentioned this. I mean, when you talk about it, they're saying, well, the players don't have the opportunity to make money, this and that. Why? We should change the rule, let them go pro out of high school. I mean, why do we make them wait 3 years? If you're saying, well, the kids should have an opportunity to make money. Well, let them go pro. I mean, why if you're a talented musician or artist, they don't wait till you're a certain age before you sign with a record label. So if we want to help, I'm just talking about an easy solution for some of that logic of these players are young and talented and they should be able to earn some money. We got the NFL, now you got the USFL, and you got the XFL, you got the Canadian League. So there's 4 leagues. You can go make money. Go let them go. If you're 14 years old and you're in a class of 2026 and you think you're good enough to play in the pros, have at it, bro. You know what I mean? So anyway, I think that it's frustrating to some coaches because we're coaching kind of semi-pro professional ball. It's not hitting our level. I say our level, the Group of 5, 1AA level as much as the Power 5s, but it's a factor. And I don't know if we're going to put that genie back in the bottle, but it's not been part of our conversations per se. We're trying to get enough money to fund all of our projects and all the things we got going on. And I want to take care of the players. We're doing cost of attendance and doing all the things that typically you would do for full scholarship athletes. And recruiting going forward, which is different, is it's all full scholarships, not halves or quarters or something like that. So,
Coach, just wanted to ask you another question about recruiting. Just browsing through the media guide, I think there's 60 players on your roster that are from the state of Alabama. How, in your short time here, how much of a relationship have you been able to forge with some of the coaches in this state from the high school level? And how important is it to you to make sure that you have kids from this state playing for this program and not going to a Troy or UAB or USA, that they're coming to play at Jacksonville State?
Yeah, being a state school, that helps. But I've recruited the state before, and I got several guys on my staff that have recruited the state for many, many years. And I've known this, but it's reinforced it since I've gotten hired. There's great high school football in the state of Alabama. Not good, great. And they've got great high school coaches. You know, and some states got a lot of players, but they don't support the high school coaches as much as they do as far as salaries, facilities, and all that they do in this state. And, you know, there's Alabama and Auburn, and, you know, if they want to go there, they're probably going to beat us in a recruit. But the other ones, we think we can beat. We think we got a better product to sell than the other schools that are going to be on our level in recruiting. And so the 60 is a good number, but we will cover the entire state of Alabama every year. What I mean by covering, and if there's a good player in state, if it's the same guy somewhere in the state of Alabama and in a different state and everything is equal, we're taking the guy from Alabama first, because I think he'll have a sense of pride in playing for Jack State. But we'll go other areas too. What I've done with our coaches, we've recovered the whole state of Alabama, but then we also go to areas that our coaches are familiar with, whether it's greater Atlanta area, places in Florida, places in Mississippi, things that we've been. We won't really go to California or Texas, but if our coaches have long-standing relationships with a high school guy and there's a guy from, you know, Arizona or California or something that's good enough to win with, then we'll recruit them from there too. I mean, we're wide open. We're not shutting the door on anything, but we'll make – if there's a guy good enough to win with in the state of Alabama, we hope he comes here. Simple enough.
Hey, Coach, Mo Carter from Fox 54 in Huntsville. You mentioned how Greg and Josh has basically given you a tutorial about the history of Jacksonville State's football program. I'd love to know, what have they informed you about when it comes to this school's rivalry with the University of North Alabama? Plus, what are your thoughts about playing them in a baseball stadium in October?
Yeah, that'd be neat. Some of our guys have went up. I don't know if Greg's went up to look at the stadium, and that'll be a unique thing. I've never done that. The most unique thing about that, I guess, is we're going to go always in the same direction. So I don't know what happens if a guy picks a pass off and gets confused and goes the wrong way. Do you give him a safety, or you let him turn around and go back? But that'll be different. At least that's better than I've seen some baseball stadiums where both teams are on the same sidelines. That would not be good. I don't want to be anywhere close to the people we're playing. So, I mean, we'll make it happen. And you know, I think the rivalry's been always good. Obviously, from back in the Division II days and all that. But we're moving on next year. But that'll be a fun game. I think it'll be a neat. I mean, I'm saying Huntsville's a growing city, right? I mean, there's a lot happening. You know, it's probably not as good a town as Jacksonville, but it's a pretty good town. But no, I'm excited. I haven't been there. I'm excited. We'll be excited to go up there, and the venue that they put on should be. There's a reason they're putting it there. I think they maybe think that'll be a kind of a neat experience. So when we get to that point. But I was just talking to Zach earlier. When you look at the schedule, and I studied a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, all of our conference games are in the back half. 5 of our last 6 games are all of our conference games. So we'll know about midseason. We'll know for sure, you know, what we have and what we don't have in our program.
Speaking of the great city of Jacksonville, maybe a little biased, I think it's one of the coolest college towns. Since you've been here for a couple of months, what have you done to make this place home? And what are your favorite things to do outside of football?
Yeah, I don't do a whole lot outside of football, other than I've done a lot of projects at my house. You know, we got a house. Like, I would give you the address, but then don't you put that out there. That might not be good, right? But I did. First thing I did was build a gate outside on the driveway. So some of you guys, I'm not going to give you the gate code to get in. No, it's been working on doing a couple of projects at the house. That's been really neat. I wanted to make sure we've got to build a fence. And that's for my 2 little Pomeranian puppies, so they don't get lost and get out there, because we got a little bit of land. But this is a neat town. I mean, the nice part about it, I tell everybody in Jacksonville, everything's easy. There's no traffic. I mean, not counting the 2 stoplights. You know, there's no waiting in restaurants. You can get a seat and go any night of the week and do that. You know, there's not lines at the grocery store. You know, my kids, Raquel's, and they always tease me that I like going grocery shopping. You know, like, who likes going grocery shopping? I do, for some reason, because you can buy like 30 things and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. You know, it's like you get all that variety. So we got a couple nice grocery stores. So I don't even know if we have a movie theater. I don't go to the movies anyway. But why? I mean, I got a big TV at home, so why I have to go to the movies? But you know, I kind of get involved. You know, I will tell you this. I'm anxious to play some pickleball, you know, getting a pickleball court built. And we have, I think 1 or 2 on campus, and I understand our president is taking pickleball lessons, which now I know why he wants to play me, because he was a tennis player before, I guess, and now he's taking pickleball lessons, and so now I think I'm getting set up, and I really do, playing pickleball with President Killingsworth. But I'm from a small town in West Virginia, and my wife is as well. So this feels like that anyway. But it's been good, been a lot of fun.
Time for a couple more.
Hey again, Coach. Appreciate the honesty here today, and of course the conversation with NIL, recruitment, the expansion of what we're seeing in the Power 5 with the conferences. So much change is happening in college football, and you've been there in the Power 5, and now where you're sitting, I'm just curious, what do you hope for college football moving forward with all these changes? And I'm sure you mentioned you love that your guys just love playing football at this level. You see that. Do you feel all this stuff is going to touch this level of football?
I think it probably is inevitable, but it will. And I think college football is in danger right now. It's not sustainable what we're doing. I mean, you got to sit back and be realistic. I mean, I'm all for getting what the players, giving them more so they're comfortable living. I didn't think they had a bad deal to start with. I mean, it's better now than it's ever been. And it was better 2 years ago than it was 20 years ago and all that. And if they came out of the way, they give every player $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 each, all the way across the board. I like when everybody gets it, not one guy's, but I understand when certain guys that are really, really talented get that, and the rules are. I just think there has to be some kind of cap or contracts or some kind of thing so you don't buy yourself, a championship, so to speak. And in the NFL, the best team picks last. In college, the best teams are going to be picking first. So the best teams are always going to be the best teams. There's a reason why the NFL and those leagues have certain rules. And so for competitive reasons, they give the team that finished last, at least they get the first picks, right? So it's not sustainable what we're doing. I think I don't know that I like to tell the truth. Hell, I'm too old not to. But this Division I council that's talking about giving you unlimited transfer, who's on that council? There must not be one Division I football or basketball coach, men or women's basketball coach, on that council. And if they are, they're getting outvoted, because they're just passing rules. I was a president of the AFCA, the Football Coach Association, a few years ago, and it opened my eyes up, because I'm like, man, I'm the president of this organization, 10,000 coaches, representing coaches at all levels, high school, college, pro, whatever, and I'm gonna have a seat at the table, and I'm gonna have an impact on some of these NCAA rules and all that. Nothing. Wasn't even on a committee. And I found out all these people that are voting are some obscure sport up in New Hampshire or Maine that are making decisions for Division I football. I'm like, hell, no wonder it's a mess. And so, the NCAA got out of my opinion, from a bird's eye view, the NCAA kind of got out of this stuff and said, we ain't going to bother with NIL, and we ain't going to get all that. And then, now all of a sudden they went, we'll come in there and let you transfer as many times as you want, and then back away. So I don't know what the NCAA's deal is. I don't know what that NCAA, whoever's on this council making decisions that affect college sports, but they ain't got an idea. They need to talk to the people on the front line. It's like you're a military general. I was watching Patton the other day on TV, and it's interesting because he was middle of it, but, General Bradley was the one who was right in the middle of the front lines, right? And I'm impressing you with my knowledge, right? Anyway, if you want to find out what's going on in the middle of the battle, you get to your sergeants and your colonels and the people that are marching. You don't get to that guy sitting behind a desk that don't know which way is up, right? So, to my opinion, I'm biased. Why aren't you asking football coaches and athletic directors what's best for college sports instead of somebody else? It's like players now, they're going to get bit in the union. That ain't a good thing. Getting in the union, now what are they going to do? Strike, and then you can fire them, and it's just a mess. There's people that are making decisions that think they know what's best for college athletics that had never been involved in college athletics. You want to get to go to Congress? I'll put it out there right now. All right, you're a congressman or a senator, and you think you got bigger problems in college sports. Let us solve college sports. You all fix inflation and gas prices. You know what I'm saying? I'm not running for office either. No. God bless politicians. Who would want to do that? Not me. They don't get paid enough to take that kind of headache.
One more question from John.
You guys didn't think you were getting that tutorial today, were you?
Coach, last
got
one
me
I
in a
have for you.
mood.
Last one I have for you. You probably didn't think I was going to ask about a punter, but when you were back at West Virginia, you coached Pat McAfee. He's become like this media mogul sensation that
Yeah,
showed
isn't he
his
great?
crazy numbers. Can you just let me into when you were recruiting him? Was there something in that guy's personality where you said, yeah, he'd go on to do something like that one day?
No, I knew he was a little wacky, but he could really kick and punt. I mean, he could do him. He was the best, most talented one I had. Could do both, but he was a little off the wall. He never late for practice and but I kind of quit checking his curfew. You know what I mean? Because if I checked it, I probably was not going to like what I saw, and then I didn't want to suspend him because he was always ready to play. But Pat, what's neat about Pat is he's making a great living and having success just being who he is. He's 100%. That's who he is. Some people may put on that Pat ain't putting on a show. That's who he is 100% of the time. So our guy here is a little off the wall too. My little Australian punter. He might have a career down in Australia somewhere doing what Pat McAfee's doing. But Pat, I'm so proud of him. I got to see him a couple years ago. He was doing a game for ESPN when I was at Ole Miss and playing Mississippi State. But he's he was a great teammate, though. He was. I mean, the kids everybody on the team loved him because he was a tough guy, and he was off the wall a little bit, but he was there every day. Yep. I saw him go off the ropes a little bit. I saw him one time jump off into a river like 15 feet high. That'd make me a little bit nervous. If I was his coach, I wouldn't let him do that. I'd have strapped him in somewhere and kept him to the game. But yeah, I don't like right now. I get nervous whenever he starts telling stories. I'm like, I probably should have known that as his coach, but I know I didn't because they were keeping things from me. Which you find out a lot of things as head coach, like players start telling stories, and I'm like, that's probably a good thing I didn't know all this. So anyway, but he's doing good.
All right, appreciate
All right.
it, guys.
Okay, thank y'all.